Let's have a look at why Djokovic believes it's so difficult to control your internal experiences and why he's actually advocating not to try and just be positive and stay calm. Hardwired into our brain is almost this evolutionary hangover to have a strong biological response to competition. It is literally a potential threat. What happens when I don't have the ideal state? I end up worrying about worry. The best indication of performance, best indicator of performance is focus. Can you focus on the right thing at the right time? Why is it more common that we feel this sense of worry and anxiety and performance anxiety that we see in performance contexts? Well, one of the reasons is welcome to Expressions of Interest, where we break down complex psychological concepts, making them engaging and actionable to help you thrive in everyday life. My name is Greer-Smith, and I'm a generally registered psychologist specializing in performance psychology. I currently work for Surfing Australia in their high performance department, as well as elite athletes and corporations around Australia. Thanks for joining me today. Today's topic is on mental toughness. How do we improve our mental strength? Obviously, I'm working with a lot of different elite athletes, so I thought this was a really important topic to speak to because so commonly I see and hear on broadcasts from commentators and different people alike is that they just need to be calm. The athlete just needs to relax and look how calm and confident they are right there. And so then people ask me, like, are they just born this way, that some people can just naturally be so calm in such a crazy situation? Or do they have this skill where they can just, when it matters most, the world title's on the line, the biggest achievement that they're trying to do, these gifted people that can just control and calm it down? Because the rest of us normal folk are sitting here going, well, I certainly don't do that and don't experience that. When I'm playing golf on the weekend, I'm getting frustrated at missing shots. I'm getting nervous over a 2-foot putt. How come I can't do that? So what I wanted to do today is provide some theoretical background to why it's so hard for us to just be calm and think positive in high performance situations. Part 2 of this is going to be the skills and the protocols that I talk to my athletes about. But firstly, we need to delve into the theory and the story of how we got here. And that will take us down how we got here as a species. So when we go into this, there's some terms that you'll hear me say, and that's internal experiences. I just want to define that and set that up to begin with. Is when I'm talking about internal experiences, I'm talking about the thoughts, the emotions, the feelings that go on in our internal world. So you'll hear me say internal experiences a lot throughout this podcast. So now you know that I'm referring to the thoughts, the feelings, emotions, all the good, bad, in between, everything that happens in our internal world going on. And that has a big effect on what's happening in what we do in our behaviors. Okay. So let me paint the picture for you. I think a good example is Novak Djokovic at the US Open in the final last year. What was going through his mind as he's preparing to verse Medvedev, who he'd lost to the year before in his attempt to win the calendar Grand Slam, which is a thing that no one's done for decades and a big thing that he really wanted to do. He was dominating the world. He'd won 3 of the last Grand Slams. He needed to win the 4th, and he lost to Medvedev in the final. Fast forward to the 2023 US Open final, and he's versing Medvedev again. what was showing up for Djokovic? Now, some mental experts might say, well, clearly he'd mastered his mind more and he was able to think positive, stay calm, and do what he needed to do. It was really interesting hearing from the great man himself. And what he actually said is, what you didn't see was an absolute cyclone going on inside my head. I had all these crazy thoughts and experiences going on. But I was able to not stay in there too long and shift my focus on what was important. And then he further went on to say, I don't subscribe to just think positive and there's no room for not believing in yourself and there's total optimism. Because in his words, he said, that's impossible. Now that's really interesting coming from arguably one of the most mentally tough athletes of all time. 24 Grand Slam winner, and I don't know off the top of my head, but an incredible winning percentage in finals and an incredible ability to come back from 2 sets to love down and all sorts of difficulties. And he said that, no, I wasn't born this way, not at all. He's worked extremely hard to develop the skills and the abilities to be able to do that. So let's have a look at why Djokovic believes it's so difficult to control your internal experiences and why he's actually advocating not to try and just be positive and stay calm. So to begin with, we need to look to biology to understand where this is coming from, right? If we look at it, what are some of the reasons of some of these difficult internal experiences going on in our mind? As we've spoken about previously on this podcast, there's some evidence around our threat detection system that's going in. Quick recap. So everyone's heard of fight or flight, and we got freeze. So what's happening there is we've got our prefrontal cortex at the front of the brain. That's our CPU, our operating system. And that's trying to make sense of all the sensory information and all the information that the rest of our body is going. And that then enables us to think forward in time, back in time, put everything together to try and do the best thing when we need to. But that's a somewhat early evolutionary adaptation. The further back we go in our brain, the older, the more primitive that evolution is to the growth of the biology. So if we go back, the mid part of the brain is the limbic system, and that houses all our emotions. So, or the mammalian brain, all mammals have a limbic system, but not all of them have as large a prefrontal cortex as humans. Hence why we have a very good ability to think about our situation, to avoid things that have caused harm and that are dangerous. But the end of the day is the limbic system is the thing that's going to give you the information first and more strongly. So we've got this little part in the limbic system, the amygdala. That's our threat detection system. That's its job is to detect a threat, send the signal forward to the brain, and then we've got to try and know what to do with it. But it doesn't discriminate at all. It doesn't differentiate between different threats too well. It's just kind of this siren that goes off, and it upregulates our underlying biology with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. It needs to upregulate to do something about the threat. Okay, but how does this then relate to sport? Well, most of that threat detection is around survival, and you think, okay, well, that's a physical threat. You know, the tiger's coming. Do I need to fight or run away from the tiger or freeze? But there's also psychological threats. People are saying stuff and doing different things, and that elicits that same similar response in us. But what actually happens is competition is a threat. So what happened was that in our primal past, competition was an opportunity to move up the social hierarchy. And if we're at the top of the social hierarchy, we have greater access to food, we have greater access to reproduction rights, we have greater access to shelter, all our basic needs. So it's very, very beneficial to compete against others to best serve our fundamental survival needs. But if we lose the competition, then we go down this social hierarchy, which has greater chance of death, less reproductive opportunity, which is very, very biologically, it pushes us very much in that biological direction, right? We've got this strong desire to reproduce. And then also that we might be outer on the group, so then we might not actually be able to survive better and have better shelter. And we see this in the chimp documentaries, is that there is sometimes skirmishes between different chimps, and the alpha male eats first, and he has the best selection of potential mates, right? So hardwired into our brain is almost this evolutionary hangover to have a strong biological response to competition. It is literally a potential threat that goes on. So that starts giving us the understanding of this is a very normal and very powerful response that happens when I enter competition. I don't just feel this way for no reason. So evolution has then created two main motivations when we enter competition. We have the desire to win and the desire not to lose. They sound similar, but they're quite different. When the desire to win is satisfied, that is met with joy and happiness of one, moved up the hierarchy. When it is not satisfied, it's met with frustration and anger. Oh, I really wanted to win. That was important. I'm frustrated. Or when that's starting to not be met, I'm getting more and more frustrated because I really, really want to win. Now, on the flip side, the desire not to lose, if that's satisfied, that's met with relief. Oh, I didn't lose. I didn't go down the social hierarchy. Wow, that's great. But if it's not satisfied, then that's met with worry and anxiety. Oh my goodness, I'm about to lose. I've worked really hard for all this stuff. What will people say? What will people think if I mess up this shot or this turn? And it could all be terrible. So now we start worrying and getting anxious. There's a third basic motivation, which is the desire to submit, which comes across as helplessness. Now, the evolutionary background to that is that if we go back to our situation with the chimps and you've got a challenger male fighting the alpha male and they're fighting, then all of a sudden the challenger goes, this is not possible. I don't think I can win. The competitor is more superior. I might need to stop because this could be lethal. I could die. So we then have to submit out of fear of the ramifications of the superior competitor. And also I think there's an element of if I submit and demonstrate this helplessness, which you see sometimes they lie in an open manner to demonstrate the helplessness, is that maybe that competitor will go easier on me because I'm not trying as hard, I'm not fighting against them, and it's maybe appealing to their moral superiority, if you can call it that, but how much of that is in the chimp world? But I think there's this evolutionary bias to they're not going to hurt me as much because I've surrendered, I've submitted, right? And so we see that in competition where we go, oh, they're so much better than me. And you go to athletes, oh, why can't I just be more confident in myself when I'm versing an athlete that's way, way better than me? And there's a bunch of different reasons that, and we'll go into that for sure. But one potential thing is that your brain is just trying to protect you, right? It's a threat. And it's going, well, that athlete is far superior. That competitor is far superior. So maybe I just need to show this helplessness because the pain of losing this might be too much. So that's one way that the brain might protect us, okay? Now, then if we move through that, there's individual variations that are different for each person. So this is the genetic component. Everyone is born with a different set of genes that they then bring into their existence. So some people, for example, experience emotions stronger than others for whatever reason. There's maybe more neural connections in the limbic system. There's a gene expression that is in their family that says there's a trait to being more emotive, right? There's different personality traits that say this person will have higher highs and lower lows. That's why you can sometimes see, how come that athlete just doesn't seem like, or that person doesn't seem like anything phases them? Well, maybe one reason is that their personality, the genetic background keeps them in this middle, and they actually don't really experience the high highs that much, but they don't experience the low lows. But some people, we also go up and down. One personality trait that would demonstrate this a bit more, and it's one of the 5 global traits, is neuroticism. It's not saying that you're neurotic, but neuroticism is the name of one of the 5 big personality traits. And what that means to some degree is that you experience these variations in emotions more strongly than others. So we have to appreciate and acknowledge that certain people bring these different elements into the performance context. The next thing is learning history, right? And this is the nature versus nurture part of it, is that through our history of being a human, we learn different things. And the brain is constantly trying to put patterns and schemas together to be more efficient when it encounters important situations. So you've had a large learning experience of being in different competitive environments. And based on what you have perceived to be reality in the situation, again, this is your perception of it, puts together some framework of how you see yourself, how you see the world, how you see performance contexts. Now, on top of that, in those learned experiences, you have important figures imprinting and modeling certain behaviors that also help to structure your learned history. So, for example, you could have a parent that puts conditions on love and affirmation. So then the athlete goes, well, Dad definitely, sometimes this is conscious, sometimes this is unconscious, but Dad definitely changed his love and affirmation when I lost compared to when I won. So therefore, when they're about to lose that situation, the brain is going, hey, I remember there was a lot of pain and discomfort of losing because my dad didn't give me as much love and affection. So that brain is going, whoa, pain, no good. I want to avoid that. So all of a sudden it floods you with these different stress chemicals of going, that was really uncomfortable. So that athlete, unfortunately, has got very strong learned experiences that losing is not just losing the competition. Losing goes with all this pain from the primary caregiver. So parents definitely be aware of that one, right? And that really influences how your child then rocks up to the next performance situation. And then we've got recent history. Your recent history definitely influences the current performance situation. Because say you've lost to a certain competitor recently, and you've versed them 3 times in the last year, and you've lost to them all 3 times. That was painful. So again, the brain goes, this is a larger threat. You've lost to them. Maybe you're not quite good enough. It starts running all these other scenarios because the recent history says that you didn't win. So that goes on top of the learned experience of and the learned history throughout your life of how you go about performance settings. And this particular competitor has been fairly challenging. Plus then you've got your genetic predisposition that you bring into that current situation. So before we even have any contextual information and pressure happening in the moment of the performance situation, we really need to appreciate and acknowledge those 3 really strong evolutionary influences that happen that we bring into every single situation. Every single performance situation, we've got these strong evolutionary influences, right? So it's not just as simple as just doing one thing in the context. We bring all this other stuff together. So then we go, well, okay, what happens when we try and control our internal experiences? What happens when we try and just stay positive? Well, firstly, unsuccessful attempts to control internal states, if that's not met, then we reduce our level of self-efficacy of doing something. So then if we look at attempts to control internal thoughts, what ends up happening is if that attempt is unsuccessful, then we have these self-judgments that we're not good enough and we're not able to do that. So for example, if we have an athlete that their learned experience said that the parents didn't believe in them much, didn't give them a whole lot of reassurance and confidence, and then this coach comes into it and says, you just need to believe in yourself more. And the athlete goes, okay, I'll try, goes out there and tries to really believe and pump themselves up, but they can't do it. Well, why? Because no one else has been able to do it in their life, so how can they do it? And so then that unsuccessful attempt reaffirms their inability to have much influence over anything in life, but especially their internal world. So that's the first thing that's difficult. Secondly, even if we have successful attempts to reduce the unwanted internal experience in the short term, what's the cost of that? So firstly, let's look at it from an example of the tennis player. And the tennis player is going, I can't come over my forehand. I'm really struggling to hit a topspin backhand. And I'm losing now. So this desire not to lose is not being satisfied. So I've got all this worry and anxiety coming up. I know, I'll just slice it. I'll just bunt it. Or in surfing, we talk about we're going to safety surf. I'm not going to go for the huge section and hit the crap out of it. I'm just going to safety that section and get to the next section. Or I've done 2 big turns. I just want to finish the last turn because the judges want to see the completion. So I just safety that last turn. Now, what ends up happening is it was successful in the short term, but what's the cost? The cost is you then avoided the thing that is performance beneficial in the long run. So next time you go, I really need to come over my forehand and hit a topspin, you've learned that you can't do it, and so you're going to do the avoidance behavior. And so now we get in a cycle of going, I really can't do that, I just got to keep avoiding. So now we're almost rewarding ourselves for avoiding things. That's clearly unhelpful because avoiding beneficial performance behaviors is one of the biggest challenges that get in the way of elite experience or performing to a great ability. And the slightest bit of avoidance, like you look at the racing car driver, and if they don't have their foot fully to the floor and they're 1/100th of a second off, they don't win the race. But really what it was is, instead of having the foot fully on, they were slightly avoidant, and for right reasons. We don't avoid things for no reason. You might be close to the wall and I just slightly take my foot off the pedal. Or clearly in our other examples is, I really want to hit the ball in. It's important, so I'm just going to slice it. But the better thing is to hit the topspin. Or I know that it's important to finish the wave off because the judges really reward completions. But then I just get used to safety. So then we build up this avoidance, these avoidant behaviors that in the long run cost us, because it gives us less likelihood of doing the best performance behavior, right? So the key reflection is not whether I was successful in reducing my internal state. Was I successful at getting rid of that undesirable internal experience? The real question is, did I have the successful performance outcome? Was the performance behavior that I wanted successful? I really know I need to hit a topspin forehand to win the match, not whether I successfully reduced the internal experience, right? Now, some methods of reducing internal experiences actually result in more unwanted internal experiences. Now, because this is particularly complexing, and it's a bit of a paradox, because in our external world, in reality, if we spill the milk, we go, well, I don't want spilt milk on the ground, and so naturally I clean it up and I get rid of it. So then we think that we can then do that internally and go, I just need to get rid of the undesirable internal experience. But what ends up happening is that, and this is what the research shows, is that attempts to reduce unwanted internal experiences actually increase the likelihood of having those internal experiences, because you just keep thinking about it and it's a loop over and over and over and again. So actually, if you did nothing, it would be better than getting in there and trying to reduce and get rid of those internal experiences, okay? And then the final thing to consider is what happens when I don't have the ideal state. I end up worrying about worry. So what happens is when I'm calm and when I'm confident, I play really well. So therefore, that makes sense. I should just be calm and confident. But then we go into the performance and we start playing, and all of a sudden some anxiety pops up. I don't want to lose, and go, I can't have that. I can't have that, because I know that when I perform well, I'm calm. So now we start worrying about these internal states and going, okay, you can't have this. And we become dependent on internal states for performance. That's especially problematic because, as we've just gone through, there's a whole lot of very powerful biology that is telling you that there's some threats that is going to create all these unwanted internal experiences. So it's extremely difficult not to have these unwanted internal experiences, and being dependent on them to perform is not only not very possible, but it creates more and more worry, and then you're just totally consumed by it, right? But let's acknowledge that when you are calm and when you are confident, you do perform better. I certainly want to acknowledge that, because a lot of athletes come to me and go, yeah, but I had a really good performance. When I won that national championship or performed really, really well, I found I was really calm. And for whatever reason, I was confident. I just knew. And our brain's very good at correlation. It's not good at causation. It was a correlation that happened, but it's not because you were calm and confident. There's a bunch of other things that happened. But But let's very much acknowledge that when you're in training and when you are calm and you're confident, that you do perform well. My question is, how likely are you going to just stay or just be calm and confident during competition? Well, as we've discovered earlier, not very likely. Then what is your ability to control your internal experiences based on all the underlying biology we spoke about? And what then happens to you, and what's the cost of being dependent on that state and not being able to control it? And probably lastly, is your energy and your cognitive resources, which are very valuable, better used in other areas? Because if you're in here, internal, trying to control, reduce, get rid of these experiences, they're in your internal world. They're not in the external world where performance actually happens. So that's the other thing to consider, is that the best indication of performance, the best indicator of performance is focus. Can you focus on the right thing at the right time? And that's all in the external world. There's all this performance information that's really vital for you to do that right thing at the right time. Where am I sitting? Where are my competitors are? Where are the waves at? What am I looking for in the particular wave to get it? Or in tennis, what's my competitor doing? What type of exchanges do I want? Does he have a weaker backhand? Is he over here? Is he out of the court? Or is he recovering too quickly? Can I go back in behind him? All this information is external. And if we're in here going, I need to control what's going on, we don't have as much resources to apply to those valuable information that's context specific and performance relevant. So all of that together, I'm going, man, it's tough to just control and reduce, right? And if we look at what some of the natural things we do to control and reduce, is often we try and suppress. We go, I'm just going to bury that thought deep down and just not have it. Well, you know, what happens when you put all the stuff under the rug? It's going to come up eventually, right? It's really hard to push down. Then the other thing we do is distraction. And we see this a lot before events. Athletes are on their phone, and some people go, oh, they're addicted to social media. Maybe, but the other possibility is that they are unwilling to sit with those difficult internal experiences that we described earlier. They're unwilling to sit with the desire not to lose, and so therefore they'll distract themselves on social media. The third thing is we just replace it. We just replace the unwanted internal experience with something else, right? And so the example that I give to some of my athletes is, I'm going to get you to not think about a pink fluffy elephant. Now, we've got this amazing machine that you're connected to and that it can detect what your thoughts are. We've also got a machine that you're connected to that will give you an electrical shock each time that you think of a pink fluffy elephant. So whatever you do, don't think of pink fluffy elephant. Now, all of us will go through one of those three variations. We might totally replace it and go, I'm just going to think about something else for that long period of time. Or I'm going to distract myself and go red balloon, red balloon, red balloon, something like that different. But if we notice what's happening there, everything is to avoid thinking about the pink fluffy elephant. Now, depends if you try this at home, it'll be interesting. But for most of us, after a minute, we're going to start thinking of a pink fluffy elephant. Now, if you don't, you go, well, Tom, actually, I've got strong mental toughness. Fair enough. But the cognitive load and the cost of you suppressing, distracting, replacing pink fluffy elephant is very demanding. And again, I'd argue, could those cognitive resources be better put to external stimuli that are going to give you the best chance of performing? So then if we progress and go, well, why is it more common that we feel this sense of, worry and anxiety and performance anxiety that we see in performance contexts? Well, one of the reasons is that what worry is you're trying to solve problems and solve things. And if we take a step back, I think what's fundamental is that uncertainty is one of the most undesirable emotions that we have. Us as humans, we can put up with the most terrible of experiences, grief and distraught and fear. We can put up with that in a tremendous amount. But uncertainty is very, very unwanted. For example, we can kind of deal with the distress of finding out about a terminal illness. But when that terminal illness will fulfill is really unwanted. When that terminal illness comes to fruition is really the undesirable thing. So what our brain does is it goes, okay, I've got to think about possibilities because I don't want this unknown, right? This unknowing is very difficult. So it starts thinking. And if we look at the definition of anxiety, it's not negative thinking, it's excessive thinking. So we're excessively thinking about all the possibilities of this uncertainty. And that's what happens in performance contexts. We're sitting there on the beach, on the court, on the field, and there's a whole lot of uncertainty of what will happen in this competitive environment that has huge evolutionary repercussions. So our brain goes, I'm going to try and get rid of that uncertainty by thinking of some potential situations that might happen. So then we start worrying. And really, we start excessively thinking and trying to solve and get rid of the unknown, right? So again, that leads to the understanding of, man, it's really hard to go into performance settings that we care a lot about, that's really important to us, and not have some of this noise go on inside our head. And really, that starts to lead to the understanding of what maybe an alternative approach is. Firstly, we need to acknowledge and normalize all the evolutionary background, our genetic predisposition, our learned experiences, our recent history, our desire to win, our desire not to lose, our desire to not sit with uncertainty. Let's acknowledge all of that and appreciate that that's normal. That is a normal biological experience to have. And if you didn't have that, I'd actually be slightly concerned because that's abnormal not to have that, because that's what got us here. That is what enabled us to survive as a species. It's hardwired into your brain. Now, some people, sure, they're not going to experience as much worry or anxiety because of all those different factors, maybe in different amounts. But, and I'm certainly not saying every single person will experience worry and anxiety in every performance setting. No. But what I'm saying is it's extremely normal to have a variation of that, to meet with it because it matters to you and because you care, right? So if it's not about thinking positive, and it's not about reducing, what is it about? So if we look at what we actually have a bit more control over, we have a bit more control over how we want to act. What are the actions that we want to take? And this is different to controlling our internal experiences, okay? So performance is, can we focus on the right thing at the right time? And we can train that. We can look at some activities and some tools to better enable us to do so. But if we look at it fundamentally, it goes, okay, I need to have an ability to sit back and be okay with, have some level of acceptance of this normal biological process going inside my internal world. And as the great Djokovic said, not stay there too long, and shift our focus to task-relevant information. Let's get out of our head and into the world and focus on the information that's important to us. Now, that's easier said than done. So, next episode, what we'll talk about is the specific tools, the protocols, and the activities that I prescribe to my athletes in order to better get distance and to be able to not get as consumed by the internal world and the difficulties of our internal world. And how do we then focus on the right thing at the right time? So make sure that you tune in for next week's episode on part 2 of how do we improve our mental strength. Now, always I ask if you could express what you're interested in. So please comment on the posts, jump onto the social media channels, EOI_pod on Instagram and on YouTube. I'm really here to serve you guys. I would love to hear what you're interested in, how I can help, how I can serve you guys. This show is all really about you, and for me to provide the information that I have, the experience that I have with different elite athletes and executives, and really try and make it accessible for you guys to better your lives. If you can perform slightly better at golf on a Saturday, let me know. That's fantastic. That's what I'm here for. So again, thanks for listening, guys. Appreciate your time here at Expressions of Interest. Have a good day.